Are you sitting on a big pile of money? One of the most common questions that I get asked is whether I should buy an investment property with cash or with a mortgage. And in this video, we're going to cover that topic. Hey, it's Gary from Let Property, and we help thousands of landlords every year buy and sell their investment property through the sale of specialist tenanted properties. I personally own a multiple seven-figure property portfolio, and I'm here today to help investors just like you experience property investing in a hands-off way, just like myself. So when we talk about cash or a mortgage purchase, what we mean is, are we going to pay all of the money out of our bank to buy the property as a cash purchase with no financing against the property? Or are we going to get financing from a lender, typically in the form of a buy-to-let mortgage, and put that on the property, meaning we have to put less cash into the purchase? So the first thing you need to consider when you're taking lending is the loan to value. LTV for short. Typically speaking, buy-to-let mortgages in the UK have a 75% loan to value. That means if you were buying a property at £100,000, you would borrow £75,000 off the bank, and you would only need to put £25,000 down as a deposit, plus the costs that you would have, such as taxes and any legal fees to purchase that property. Now, we work with investors all over the UK with varying levels of income, with varying levels of cash reserves, with varying levels of goals. And the reality is most of them don't understand initially whether they should actually just purchase the property in cash or whether they should use their money more wisely and get financing on the property so that they can build a bigger and better portfolio with the money that they've got. The thing is, when it comes to my own personal circumstance, this was actually something that changed a lot for me, and I want to explain that in this video and perhaps give you a little food for thought as to whether you should buy a property with cash or with a mortgage. So it's undoubtedly known that if you buy properties with a mortgage, i.e. take financing from the bank, the cost of the lending in most cases in the UK is going to be cheaper than the amount you would be able to generate in that property to make those mortgage payments. Generally speaking, for buy-to-let properties in the UK, it is better to get a mortgage. However, what you need to factor in is the risks, and you need to also factor in what your goals truly are, because there's other caveats and downsides to having a mortgage that we will discuss in this video. What I always say to people to start with is really like, what is your goal, okay? Do you have like an income goal? Do you have a portfolio size goal? Like, what are you actually trying to achieve from property investing? And most clients that I'm working with, they're usually buying a property portfolio for the retirement, and they've usually got some form of income goal that they're trying to reach. If we're looking at very simple math, let's say we were able to achieve a 7% yield and we were to invest £1 million into property, that means that every single year we would generate £70,000 in net income on that property portfolio. Now, if you had the £1 million and that was your income goal to generate from property, a cash purchase would be fine because you can just spend the £1 million, get the £70,000 a year, job's done. And that doesn't even account for the capital growth that you're going to have in all those properties too. So it's like, we could finance those properties. We could take £1 million if we're working at a 75% loan to value. We could buy £4 million worth of property, and we could probably get an income into £200,000 or £300,000 per month, and we would have mortgage payments as well to look at paying too. Even with those mortgage payments coming off, we would most likely still make more money on that portfolio by actually getting it with a mortgage. But the point is like, what's the goal? The goal was just to get £70,000 per year with the £1 million. We've made it very low risk by buying them all in cash. We don't have any mortgage rates to worry about. We don't have any risk associated with that portfolio. It's fully owned outright, and we have reached the goal that we were looking to achieve from property. At the level of 75% loan to value, you can effectively buy 4 properties for the price of 1. So it really just comes down to how much cash you have and how much you're looking to achieve. And what I would recommend you do is you take like a 1 to 5 year plan, and you actually think about what you're trying to achieve in terms of income, in terms of goals from your property portfolio. If you're just looking for a little bit of supplementary income, in some cases it might not even make sense to get a mortgage. You might not even be eligible for a mortgage. It might not even be something you want to go down the route of. You might want to just put that out in cash and buy a single property. It might be the case that, as I say, you're trying to make £5,000 a month and you've got a limited cash constrained budget. It might be the case that you're going to come in, you're going to buy some with a mortgage initially, you're going to build up those properties, and then in time, you're going to actually then start to, buy things out or buy things with cash. If we even consider the concept of refinancing, that's where we buy a property now and then actually finance it down the line when it's worth more money, because properties capitally grow, and we say in the UK that properties double every 7 to 10 years. That ultimately means that you can finance more money out of them down the line as well, not just from day one of purchase. If we're talking about the level of institutional investors, like how do they look at financing? Well, what they ultimately look at is they build a tolerance in terms of the loan to value of their entire portfolio, okay? So, big investors that I know, like some of them sit at the level of like 60%. So they don't want to have an entire portfolio which has more than 60% of lending on it, okay? That means that effectively 40% of the value of that portfolio is owned by them and 60% is owned by the bank. It's just a tolerance, right? Some people are much more tolerant than others. Some people will go to 80%, 90%. They'll really push the loan value of that portfolio and they'll try and borrow as much against it so that they can ultimately do more with their money down the line. And I think if you're trying to do property as a full-time business, that makes sense because that, financially speaking, is always the model. But if you're just trying to do it as a retirement game, it might be the case that going down the route of large levels of financing might not be something that you're actually looking to do. Like for me, I don't like having a lot of mortgages personally because I don't want to do the paperwork. In the UK, we've got 2-year and 5-year fixed rates. That's the way it works in the UK. So you need to constantly keep renewing your mortgages and just dealing with it each time of the year. And for me, getting to £10,000 per month was my only income goal. My portfolio right now is worth 1.6 million or something like that. And I get that income from it. And a lot of that portfolio, I think 70% of it at the moment, is actually owned in cash. I don't have a massive debt token against my portfolio because I didn't want to have the hassle of having all these mortgages. Like, what are the real risks of having mortgages anyway? Like, if we go like really extreme, like back in 2008, when you had a mortgage on properties and you had a lot of lending from one bank, the banks actually called the loans back. So if you had £1 million in lending off a bank and you had a portfolio that was worth £1 million, you'd really debted it up. And that's what happened to a lot of people in 2008. Very hard to do that today. The loan to value tolerance is a lot lower today than it used to be back in 2008. But a lot of the banks actually came back and said, we need that £1 million back. And in 2008, property prices dropped. So people had portfolios that were worth 700,000 and they owed the bank £1 million, and that was where you end up in the red. So really, when it comes to loan to value, it just comes down to risk. It comes down to how much of a tolerance people are looking to take against that portfolio. In the mainstream of investors and most of the clients we work with, people consider 75% loan to value to be very safe. And I think if you're trying to get your way into property and cash is a limitation for you, many people will opt for the route for going for a buy-to-let mortgage, especially on their first few properties. It's exactly what I did in the early days. Is I got a lot of stuff with mortgages. I wasn't as cash rich at that time. I was buying into property, and I'm glad I did it because many of the properties that I bought in with buy-to-let mortgages at that time have increased dramatically. And what's amazing about that is that if I buy £100,000 property and I get a 75% loan to value, so I put down £25,000, and that property grows by £30,000, I've effectively doubled the money I put in, okay? The capital growth in that property has doubled, right? Because I only put £25,000 down as a deposit, but all of the upside in that property goes into my pocket. But it works the other way too, and that's what we need to consider, right? It's like, how much risk tolerance do you want to take on that purchase when you're coming in to buy? So to sum this all up, purely take your income goals and put it on a spreadsheet. How much money would I like to generate from property as an income? How much cash do I have, and how much cash will I have available for investment over the next 2 to 5 years as I build this property portfolio? From there, you just simply work out, can I actually afford just to cash purchase a portfolio to hit my income goal? If I can't, then I'm going to take financing. I need to consider the cost of financing when I'm doing that. I'm going to need to buy more properties because I'm going to have the mortgage payments on some of these properties, which is going to bring my net cash flow on each unit down. So you just have to work out exactly what your own goals are. Different investors do it differently. Some are highly debt tolerant, some are highly not. Just really comes down to what you're looking to achieve. If you're interested in finding out the secret that first-time investors don't understand, then click the link up here to check that video out.